About chapter 19, section 1, and the title of this is Economic Resources. The big idea here is that an economic system is the way a society organizes the production and consumption of goods and services. You'll see, number one, what is a good? It is a thing, right? A service is something that you provide. Factors of production, natural resources, labor, capital, entrepreneur, GDP, standard of living, these are all items that we'll get into today. So, question. Do you agree that people who do not take risks will never succeed in business? Because after all, the word entrepreneur means to undertake. Any investment that you make, you could potentially fail. There's no such thing as a sure thing in business. If you're careful market research and you weigh the pros and cons and you do your cost-benefit analysis, you can remove a lot of unknowns, but ultimately there's risk in any business. And so again, I want to review these 4 factors of production. First off, things produced, economists use the term output. So if the output of your jelly donut shop, well, is your jelly donuts. So that's the thing you produce. And it comes in 2 forms. It can be a service. Maybe if you decide to cut hair for a living, you would be providing a service that has value. And that, of course, is work performed by a person for someone else. Right now, my bike is in the shop because I broke a spoke. The hub in Brevard is fixing it. That's a service that they are within their rights to charge me for. There's the part, which is the good. That is the spoke, the little thing. And then there is the service of fixing it, because I've never taken the time to learn how to fix a spoke. Should know, but I haven't, and now I have to pay someone to do it. And they will be able to make money off of my lack of knowledge, which is perfectly fair. Secondly, goods. Goods are physical things. Books are a great example. If you write a book, you produce a good. Formally, we call these tangible products that we use to satisfy our wants and needs. My phone is a good. It's a consumer good, in fact. Now, I would say that a phone would be certainly a need in today's world. A fancy smartphone versus flip phone, that would probably be a want. But when I bought it, it satisfied that need for a phone. Got to have a phone. So that was a good. But secondly, capital goods. These satisfy wants indirectly by aiding in the production of consumer goods. So this is a consumer good. I bought it. I am legally the end user. I can knock it out the window with a baseball bat. I can run it over with my car. I can set it on fire. I can eat it. It's mine to destroy or use for life. However, the casing was made as a capital good. It was made by a factory. If I remember correctly, they're Huawei. I can't pronounce it, but that's the factory that makes the Google Pixel phone. And the case was made in a separate department as a consumer good. It was then sold to that company who put the guts of the phone inside that case. Again, that aided in the production of said phone, but I don't just go around buying cases for phones. I'm talking about the actual metal housing. No one's going to buy that. We buy the consumer good. Okay, so production. Factors of production, once more, are resources necessary to produce goods and services. So, the first thing is going to be natural resources. These are gifts of nature that make production possible. The casing or the housing for my phone is made of aluminum. That stuff comes right out of the ground. There's a huge mine in a place called Alcoa, Tennessee, which is one of the leading producers of aluminum in our country. I can't guarantee it, but it is possible that some of my phone comes from Alcoa, Tennessee. It's a gift of nature. Could be trees, could be lumber, could be aluminum. Secondly, labor. Labor. That is the human effort directed toward producing said goods and services. I would guess that much of the production of my phone was handled automatically. It was done by a robot. However, somebody had to watch the robot. Occasionally the robot breaks. Somebody has to fix the robot. Somebody had to build the robot, etc. There is a lot of labor that went into this device. And that's the human element. Next are the capital. Capital is the previously manufactured goods used to make other goods and services. Now, in my obsessive research over which phone to buy, I wanted to know how much did it actually cost Google to make this phone. And I learned that it roughly cost them half of what I wound up paying for. So that meant that they're making a profit. So they make about a 25% profit off each item, then they pass it down to the retailer who then makes another 25% profit. So bottom line, the actual cost of this phone was significantly less than what I wound up paying. But they had to actually invest money. For every phone they make, they got to pay for it because it takes the land, the labor, and the finances to make said phone. Every single one of them costs X amount of money. Now, capital goods are the result of production. So the final end result is a phone that is worth X amount of money, and that can be sold for a profit. The profit motive is what motivates Google. They're not just, robot benefactors of society that do these things out of the kindness of their heart. No, they're making lots of money off people like. Because after all, whoever founded Google was an entrepreneur. They started a new business, which began with their search engine. Their search engine grew into the most popular search engine on the planet, and they began to introduce new products along with that. Most of them were software-based for many, many years, and they've recently gotten into the hardware business. And so they're introducing new products, and they're improving management techniques. They're getting better every year. Once more, entrepreneurs are an essential component of production. Somebody has to take that risk and give Google a try. There were also lots of failed search engines that you probably never heard of. Netscape Navigator was one of the very first search engines. I remember using it when I was your age. I don't even know if it exists anymore. Yahoo has somehow remained in existence, even though they are certainly not the most popular search engine. Dogpile is probably one you've never heard of. There are many others again. All of these were started by entrepreneurs. They were all innovative in their own way. Some made it, some did not. Entrepreneurs introduce new products and develop new management techniques. If you can find a better way to do something, do it. And you could possibly make a lot of money that way. When I was young, I was always inspired by this family that lived at the top of the hill where my grandmother lived. They were called the Brocks, and they had the biggest house in the neighborhood. It was super fancy. They had this indoor pool. I was always so excited when I got to go over. Only a few times I got to see this place. It was amazing. It was the nicest house I've ever been in. The owner of the home made his wealth by inventing a small part for a vacuum cleaner. Whatever that part was, it made the vacuum cleaner work better, and they are ultra millionaires at this point. They had the fanciest house in town. It was always cool to go see it. I always thought, man, if I can just find one small thing that makes one element of our lives easier, I'll never have to work again. So which of the following do you think is most important? Well, ultimately, they're all essential components of labor. So the next, we measure the success of a country. We use the term GDP, or gross domestic product. That is the total value of all the services produced in a country during a single year. Once more, GDP is the grand total value of all goods and services produced in our country. So one measure of your own family's economic stability is your gross income. You know, you have to put it on your taxes each year. What is your total household income? So for my wife and I, we put down a number, and that is how we did last year, how much total money we made. Now, of course, that's the gross estimate. That's before any other expenses, because the reality is after we pay all our bills, our variable budget is far smaller than what our gross budget is. And it's the same for us as it is for the entire country. When we look at GDP, that's just one measure. That means all the money that our country made last year. And economists use that. For example, this measures all goods that go into making or doing something. All money that's produced as a result. However, it doesn't factor in expenses. So once more, when we look at how much money we made as a family, that doesn't factor in how much gas it took to get here. It doesn't factor in how much food we had to buy. It doesn't factor in all the other million things, medical bills or whatnot. And this is the same with GDP. That's why it's only one measure. But how do we measure it? Well, number one, we have to find the relative worth of the goods and services that we produce. And so ultimately this helps us measure the standard of living. Standard of living means that the material well-being of an individual group or nation measured by how well their necessities and luxuries are satisfied. So once upon a time we were the nation with the highest standard of living. That is no longer true. But yet again, standard of living is a measure of how well we are doing. But it also measures just quantity. It's just a number. It doesn't measure quality. It also does not account for appreciation. So if you really wanted to know how much my phone is worth, you could look up the retail value. Although by this point I've dropped it 1,000,000 times, it's been underwater. Without this case, it would be long since dead. Even though it's been protected in a case, the value of the phone has been depreciated. If I were to try to sell you this phone, you might be willing to pay half retail, because it's a year old at this point. So you might pay, but it doesn't account for that. When we're looking at GDP, all we're looking at is how much does this phone retail for. But it's not the only measure. Also, when we're measuring an economy, we look at the net domestic product, and this actually does subtract production caused by depreciation from GDP. That means it does. The net GDP, or the net domestic product rather, measures the actual cost. And so this accounts for any costs associated with production of said goods and services, any depreciation of said vehicles. You know, let's say we own a busing company. Well, your average bus, those yellow buses, run about close to $100,000 a piece. Well, they're good for 200,000 miles, and then the state says they have to be sold. So they're sold super cheap. I mean, if you want the cheapest RV out there, buy an old school bus. They're still good for at least another 300,000 miles, but the state says they have to go at 200,000. So they go from spending 100 grand on a brand new yellow school bus to selling those things off super duper cheap. And that's a depreciation. That's accounted into our school's budget. Every X amount of years we have to buy new school buses. That's factored in. That is all part of our net domestic product.